Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. It is time for the news. Now this is a slightly lighter week than normal in terms of quantity, but we've got a super interesting lore discussion that, for once, is not about the burning of Teldrassil. Hell, it's not even about the Alliance or the Horde. What absolute madness. The Black Prince is making moves, but just before we delve into what Wrathion is doing, we do have a little bit of Battle for Azeroth news. Okay, this is sure to grab people's attention, like, headlines, Azerite power massively increased, leveling XP nerfed. Big headline, but actually it should be kind of reasonable. Now let's tackle the easy one first, leveling. So leveling is absurdly fast in Battle for Azeroth. I've not done a speed test myself, but Brutal Static clocked in 6 hours 34 using an updated Khans Legion. Now you can currently hit max level like a zone and a half, especially if you're doing like the dungeon quests, which is kind of mental. So it's no surprise to me that the most recent beta build ratcheted up the XP requirements by 15%, which to me seems pretty reasonable and really kind of in line with Legion, which itself was perfectly fine in terms of its leveling times in my view. But of course, the Heart of Azeroth power requirements, that's really what will get people talking, and it's quite the change. Yeah, it's pretty big, but it's hard to make anything of it at this stage because most beta players don't have max level characters. Those who do are finding that island expeditions and warfronts are barely done by testers. AP gains from the beta basically don't reflect the real game because of those issues. Now I find it hard to believe that they're going to tune things to be really quite different from the Legion artifact curve, though what's interesting is it's going to be different for most players. So the leveling your necklace does give you a stat boost, but its main purpose is to power your Azerite gear. Now each bit of Azerite gear has its different selections of traits, with each group of traits having a higher HOA level. This means that in terms of like the Heart of Azeroth levels that you want, normal and heroic raiders are going to be shooting for a lower target than say mythic raiders. Now to give you an example in Uldir, LFR normal Azerite gear caps level 25, heroic caps at 28, and the mythic stuff caps out at 35, which is okay, quite a bit higher. Now when I say cap, I mean the final trait, the one that gives you an item level increase. The first trait though is the spec specific one, and that's the one that really matters, and it is available 6 levels lower than your Azerite gear's max cap, so getting that bit of power shouldn't be much of a challenge. Look, we're going to have to see how this is in live, but my view is that it should be totally fine for most players, probably better than Legion, and offer good progression, but I do acknowledge that for the mythic raiders there might be a bit of a grind. Possibly less than with Legion, but still a bit of a grind. Time will tell though, so let's move on to the lore. And stuff is really heating up with Wrathion in Battle for Azeroth. Has he actually appeared? No, he is not, but his people have. Now, of course, Wrathion, he's not a solo operator. In Mists of Pandaria, he was clearly at the head of a pretty elaborate spy network throughout the continent. So this brings us to the BfA stuff. Now, while out on an island expedition, players can run into a black dragon. From that, you get an unscarred black scale. The text for this quest is pretty strange though. The player character rightly works out that this sort of thing is of interest to Wrathion, and for some reason the player is able to guess that Wrathion is probably at Blackwing Lair. Okay, so you go to Blackwing Lair, what do you find? You find Black Talon agents. Now the Black Talon people, they're like the name of his group, plus like look at the NPC name, it's not mysterious. So Blackwing Lair of course is a very important place for any black dragon. It's where Nefarian lived before we killed him, twice, and it's where Nyxia was raised after we killed her the first time, and she was killed again. But what is perhaps more interesting here is that Nefarian was quite the scientist, or at least he employed a decent few scientists, because he was spending a lot of time and a lot of resources trying to create the Chromatic Dragonflight, which essentially was a new, like, genetically modified group of black dragons that would supposedly be extremely powerful. So it seems to me that Wrathion is maybe there after some sort of research, or maybe at the very least he's like found a dusty filing cabinet full of uncorrupted black dragon eggs or something like that. But how does this information tie into what we already know? Well, it kind of depends on how Blizzard plan to move forward with some of the narrative they cut from the Legion Alpha, because when I first got access to Legion and I did the questing in High Mountain, Wrathion was there. He was in the place of Spirit Walker Ebonhorn. Now Blizzard eventually decided that the plot was a bit of a stretch, so they invented the Ebonhorn character, who pretty much filled the same role as Wrathion, but his goals were a lot less overt. Now, when we quest with Wrathion on the Alpha for Legion, we found a stash of Black Dragon eggs. That doesn't happen with Ebonhorn, but Ebonhorn does bail on us at the end of the Nefarian's lair dungeon, saying that he's got family matters to attend to. Well, Wrathion is pretty much his only known family member, so we can be pretty damn sure that the two of those guys are working together, and if we take the original plot as an indicator, it very much seems like Wrathion is in the possession of uncorrupted black dragon eggs as of a few days after the Legion story kicks off. Well, what else has Wrathion been up to? Well, at some point, as of the events of 7.2.5, the near future, he is in the Obsidian Dragon Shrine when we're there with Chromie. Now, apparently he's just visiting out of curiosity, but that's obviously bullshit. What's clear is that he's poking around a bunch of important black dragonflight locations. He's got a bunch of eggs from Neltharion's lair. Now, as for Battle for Azeroth, well, you know, it was an expansion pitched about the faction war, okay? So this is absolutely something that's relevant to Wrathion, because remember, he stoked the war between the Alliance and the Horde on Pandaria. Now, he ultimately backed the Alliance, and he seems to have befriended Anduin. More than befriended him if you've made the mistake of viewing the WoW Tumblr. Don't do that. Anyway, Wrathion backed the Alliance. Now, this was fundamentally because he sees the Alliance as a unified front, something that would be a lot less prone to internal like conflicts and bullshit, like the Horde, which, you know, made sense, kind of, given how Garrosh was at the time. Things are a little bit different now, but I suppose the Horde does have a decisive leader, though she clearly has a very strong grip on power as of the start of the expansion. Teldrassil initially seems to put her at the advantage, but it's fair to say that Lordaeron kind of evened the playing field. That said, the Alliance should be in the back foot if you think about the amount of civilian casualties they will have sustained at Teldrassil. But anyway, back in MoP, Wrathion sided with the Alliance because he wanted the entire planet to be under one political faction. He knew the dark times were coming and that the planet would not be ready, in his view, if there was two major powers who were squabbling. Now, he then did, of course, attempt to have the whole lot of us killed with the Iron Horde, with the same sort of misguided idea, but again, that was a failure. So, did Wrathion learn his lesson? Well, he seems to have, since the whole Iron Horde debacle, he's been focusing, it seems, on rebuilding the Black Dragonflight, or at least that's kind of how it looks to me. Perhaps he's like learned the folly of his past ways and he's attempting to do things the traditional way, like how his father was supposed to. But then there's the strange fact that during the BlizzCon build of BfA, Wrathion was spotted in the Stormwind Embassy. Now that could be hinting at some future involvement, although of course it was cut. I mean, it would certainly be interesting if one of the factions ended up with black dragons on their side, but I kind of doubt that will happen. Actually, you know what? Strap in. It's time to put on the tinfoil, because Battle for Azeroth has loads of nods to Warcraft 2. Well, Warcraft 2 Beyond the Dark Portal was a space expansion with dragons. So what if the champions of Azeroth, so, you know, Khadgar and co., were to team up with Wrathion and a new dragonflight and head off to, I don't know, World of Warcraft Beyond the Dark Portal again? Okay, tremendously unlikely, but it's certain that something interesting is going to go on, and it's really weird with the next expansion. N'Zoth is completely expected. No one would be surprised if they announced it. Well, part of me thinks that they don't want to be predictable. They want to really surprise people. I mean, just think about how little we know of BfA's plot past Uldir. I mean, hell, we don't even know what the equivalent of the Nighthold raid is, and at this point in Legion Beta, we absolutely knew. So that really is opening us up to an expansion that's just full of twists and turns that could lead somewhere maybe a bit unexpected. Maybe they won't just go into, oh, it's N'Zoth and we're just going to spend an expansion against all gods. Now, there is one interesting thing. If Wrathion was to join the Alliance, he would be next door neighbors of the Dark Iron Dwarves, who have just had their whole faction hub redone. So while I do some housekeeping and play us out, we're going to have a bit of a look at what the Dark Iron Dwarf place is like. And as for that housekeeping, well, basically, I just want to quickly fill you in on the Battle for Azeroth class review series, so that you roughly know what to expect with the channel over the next few days. Basically, it is going to be packed with class content. I really do view, like, doing the class review series as vitally important to the channel, and I want most of it to be done before the pre-patch. So there is going to be 4 class reviews per week, plus the normal news. I do have loads of other video ideas that have been piling up, so if you're not big into the class content, it might suck for a few weeks, but it will be followed up with a lot of variety. As for the class videos though, they're going super well, and you know, it's weird. Like, there is loads of generic issues, like say, the global cooldown change, which it doesn't feel good, in my view, to be completely honest, but, you know, other than that, I think the class changes are pretty good for most players, although I do acknowledge that there will be a few tiers shed at the very much the higher end, but that is something that I'm going to talk about in a more like sort of video essay format in the future. But there you go, that is what is up with the news. We got some tweaks to things on the Battle for Azeroth beta, and then, yeah, players found Wrathion, or at least his people, and that's a pretty damn interesting topic. So, thank you very much for watching this video. A massive thank you to everyone over on Patreon. Patreon support is fantastically helpful for the channel. There are the posters. We're not ready to reveal the July one yet, but we will pretty soon. And yeah, there's also vlogs, behind the scenes stuff over there, so you can check that out in the link in the description. And with all that said, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.